Subject, ladies and gentlemen, how keeps life? How keeps the life? I know the background's very plain. Dude, YouTube's been tough. The last couple of months, YouTube's been tough. Even coming online gives me so much anxiety. Shit. I had no idea, and I was thinking whether to address this or not, but my hands are literally shaking. That is how bad YouTube got. Shit. How MC Stan is more complicated than Hegel. Navjot, how are you, ladies and gentlemen? How are you? Yeah, the shawl is back. Also, I must announce in prescience, because people will eventually ask, I will be speaking a lot more in English. Is that fine by everybody? Is the PDF of your book freely available? It should be soon, otherwise hopefully you'll find it a traffic signal soon enough. Wow, man. Thank you so much, SP Singh. Thank you so much. Most hated. Honestly, man, internet hate is a completely different phenomenon. I think I need to write an article about it or an essay about it at some point. If it is not fine, I've said it already, you're free to leave. I just think it is time I start expanding to the English-speaking world, and therefore, I'm out and about in the city and people ask me what I do, and I tell them I speak in Hindi on my YouTube, and they're like, oh, I wish I could hear you. So I was like, might as well try it in English. Quick Prakhar versus SM main card sponsored. Guys, also, humble request. I do not intend to speak, I do not intend to try and speak about the controversy at all. I want that to die as soon as possible. The mental health impact of something like that is phenomenal. So, how's your mental health been? I don't mean to discuss that online either. It is propriety. It is my personal problem, and I will deal with it in my time. But it's been tough. That is what I will say. It has been extremely tough. The last few months have been extremely tough. And the good part is, I remember when I was in Chicago briefly. So I'll give you a little bit of background. From 1st September, I've not had a house. Even now, this house is a very empty sort of house. Maybe you can hear the echo. Maybe you can hear the fact that there is no furniture or anything in this house. It's just a table. I set it up yesterday just to be able to do the stream. But for the first 5 days, I was in Chicago. And I remember listening to a lot of David Goggins while I was there. I don't know why I bumped across David Goggins around that time. I had a backache and I was stretching a lot, so I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts. And there is a line in his episode with Joe Rogan where David Goggins is talking about how people think of him. And David Goggins is phenomenal. If the world hates you, ever listen to David Goggins, guys. He says, people think I'm crazy. People think I'm sadistic, that I like putting myself through this pain. He says, no, I don't like that. I hate it. That's why I do it. And that is partly sort of how I have dealt with my mental health during this phenomena, is that I knew diving into this that this is going to cause complication, but you got to do what you got to do. Here, the echo is some metaphor for sure. No, bro, there is no metaphor. It is just the echo. And I need to decorate this in the background. This table is going to move around. We're going to have a proper setup, but the new house is beautiful. I have to show you that at some point. Maybe Ash. So I moved in with Ash, but maybe Ash at some point will record a vlog and upload this. Thank you so much, guys. The love is fantastic. Thank you so much. And also, Ashu says, bro, love to both Shwetab and you. Exactly the spirit you should maintain for everybody involved in this. Exactly the spirit you should maintain. You guys don't realize you trying to be judges is so impactful for people involved in stuff. You guys don't realize this. There was somebody who had written somewhere, all three creators are blaming the audience. They're blaming, I don't know if blaming is the right word, but you have to understand your participation in this entire phenomenon, which is what I tried to do in the last video. Wake up. There is a certain element, there's a certain undeniable element that comes from your need to decide what is right and wrong, where you are not in the place to decide what is right and wrong, that impacts everybody. Chill out. Okay? Thank you so much, Snowflake. No, I did not move in with my girlfriend. My dad's going to kick my butt if I did that. And probably her family too. We will talk about Andrew Tate today. This is a stream I intended to do sometime around 7th August or 8th August, right before Shwetab released that video, and then I was like, dude, come on, man. Can I work or not? Bro, how to grow my YT channel? Can you do a video on that? Barely, bro. I am barely a YouTuber. If I knew how to do YouTube, I'd have more subscribers than I do. But so that is what I essentially want to talk about. If you remember, I'd mentioned somewhere that I want to talk about Manik Mana's triptych and Andrew Tate, and I thought I would talk about that. But in the meanwhile, Andrew Tate disappeared from the internet, which is also a very interesting phenomenon if you want to hear more about it. Because the funny part about Andrew Tate being deplatformed, I kept looking up whether Joe Rogan or any of the other big guys on podcasts were talking about Andrew Tate when he was a phenomenon. And as soon as he disappeared, they were more willing to talk about him. And that, I think, is a very interesting symptom of something we can discuss later on. But I want to ask, what are people's opinion on Andrew Tate now? What do you guys think at this point? What do you guys think at this point? Bhai, Young Stunners. Young Stunners is that a Pakistani duo? Because our Pakistani friends mentioned them before. Permanent Gang, what's up? He got banned. Yeah, he did get banned. How to tackle demotivation? Start by, like Peterson says, start by cleaning your room. Start by doing the most proximate thing that you can do that helps your life. But no more of this self-help bullshit, yaar. I'm done with that. It's so boring. And none of you are helped. If the question keeps repeating, none of you are helped. And we'll get to that at some point during the stream as well. Tate is a giga chad. Disrespectful to women. True. So, here's what I think. Guys, no more controversy, gibberish in the chat. Please, bro, mere muh se kuch nikal jayega yaar. Like, please. The books are going to be delivered to you soon. So here is what was interesting about Andrew Tate being deplatformed. As soon as he was deplatformed, people could speak about him more freely. And it almost seemed like people did not know what to do or talk about him before he was deplatformed. Like the big ups, the guys who talk, the podcasters, the opinion setters, the influencers in the real sense of the word, none of your Instagram gibberish, but like real influencers, opinion shapers. And it seems like part of that was because what he was saying was so radical. I'm not attributing good or bad yet. I'm not saying whether what he was saying was good or bad yet. Was so radical that people did not know how to approach that entity. After he was deplatformed, they were like, okay, this amount of crime has received this amount of punishment, so we can talk about this excess, which is, oh, why was he deplatformed? But nobody touched upon the fact that he said some really problematic shit, except Hassan Abi. Hassan Abi, respect. Hassan, if you're ever listening to this, respect. I disagree with most of the things you say, but respect. I have so much respect for Hassan Abi. That debate, the way Hassan carried himself and the way he was so calm and composed in a room full of Andrew Tate fanboys, respect. And that sort of lends the answer to why you need tough opponents. People are so often easily convinced of people that are on their side and verbalize. Something I learned throughout this controversy as far as public opinion is concerned is that public wants verbal ammunition. You give people the words and they will repeat it everywhere else. They give people the word and they will repeat it everywhere else. The public literally operates like that from the vantage point of being in the center of a controversy, whether that be Magnus versus Neiman, Andrew Tate versus Facebook, whatever, right? And I think people just do not appreciate good competition, good disagreement enough. I genuinely think part of the reason why people plateau, why people have platitudes in their growth, why they're going up and then suddenly become this flat, is because they stop appreciating disagreement enough. Think about that question. I don't care about the fact if you are wrong or right in an intellectual matter as long as you are novel. And I think that is the true virtue of Andrew Tate in our society. Andrew Tate, before we even approach the question of whether he's right and wrong, look at some of the novelty he brings to the table. Look at some of the more interesting stuff that he has to say in terms of it being a new or at least a newish perspective. What color is your Bugatti? That part of it is all bullshit. That part of it is to attract you young boys. This red pill phenomena to attract you young boys is ancient. Ancient. You can trace it all the way back to Nietzsche and Socrates. You can trace it back all the way to history. What color is your book? And I think what Andrew Tate represents is sort of that phenomena. The Socrates Nietzsche phenomena. I got your book today, signed by you, loved the aesthetic of it, haven't read it yet, but it looks promising. You will love it, I know for sure. Thank you, Radhakrishna. Tate was just bad business of lizard guy. And I think I remember listening to Cornel West talk about this dichotomy in a very brilliant phenomena. I might have mentioned this on YouTube before, but Cornel West is a professor at Columbia now. He was a professor at Harvard back then. And he said something, he's like, when I read the Bible or when I read Socrates, two of the most influential figures in how you must think, Socrates and Jesus, he says, there is something I cannot wrap my head around. And the difference is that Jesus never laughs and Socrates never cries. Jesus never laughs and Socrates never cries. And how is it that these guys can speak about the true extent, the true spectrum of human experience if one of them has no capacity to laugh and the other has no capacity to cry? And that made me realize that there is a very solid duality between those two schools of thought, the Socratic school of thought and the Jesus school of thought. And as Indians, you are, by the way, as Indians, which is most of my audience, you are more likely predisposed to the Jesus way of thought. So what is the difference? And how is Andrew Tate related to all of this? Somebody's like, you look like you've lost weight. Yeah, of course, bro. When you don't eat for a long time, that's what happens. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody's support. Guys, is the audio clear? Can you hear it properly? Naman Gupta, thank you. Welcome to Aadmi Gang. Yeah, somebody's like, I saw you in a boiler room video, bro. That is 2018 January, Bonobo at Knockdown Center in Queens. That was a long time ago. Not intermittent fasting, guys. It is called anxiety. That is also the problem with me. I have to process trauma through humor. And I am so, like, I cannot crack the jokes I want to. Okay, the audio is clear. So, what is the difference between the Socratic way of thinking and Jesus' way of thinking, or the preachings of Socrates and Jesus, and how does that relate to Andrew Tate? That is the fundamental question. And the fundamental difference, the difference at the very bottom of their philosophy is the difference between realization of God through service versus self. I remember when you, in DPS, if any of you went to DPS, the motto of DPS is service before self. So they clearly take the Jesus route. That you achieve divine, that you transcend, that you escape the confines of your biological limitation through service of others. And Socrates was of the view that you escape the confines of your biology, of your limited existence through working on yourself. That is the fundamental difference between Socrates and Jesus. And Andrew Tate is a direct lineage of the Socratic way of thinking. We will talk on Kabir. In fact, I'm going to be streaming a lot more now that I have a house, maybe every alternate day, maybe every day. Most of the streams that I do through the week, I might also private, but I'll clip and ship. So you will see a lot of those clips, and we'll talk about Kabir, we'll talk about Mirabai, we'll talk about everything that I find interesting. I've been reading enough during this time, and I've found some very interesting things to sort of pull. Somebody's like, I like both of those things. And hi Kush, you are coming to something very interesting with that too. But in general, Andrew Tate is a direct lineage of the Socratic way of thinking, also echoed by Nietzsche when he said self-overcoming and so on and so forth, that you must transcend the self through becoming an Ubermensch, right? And this is where the most interesting part of all problem solving arises. All problem solving is a dialectical problem solving. This is why people who shit on Western philosophy have not gathered just how deep Western philosophy gets. In fact, people who have the ability to shit on philosophy without reading philosophy don't understand how deep the history of thought gets. The history of thought is complex and comprehensive. One must not forget. One must not forget. So, for instance, take the nature of the problem. What do I do in life? Which is a very common question that people ask in relationship to careers and such. What do I do in life? Prakhar, what do I do in life? How do I make a career out of myself in life? What is the answer? You go to a random self-help sort of a person, they'll be like, do what you want, man. Do what your heart tells you. Is the problem solved at that level? Has the answer been given when somebody says, do what your heart wants? You'll be like, wait, but I also want to make money from what I do. So the person's like, no. Now, do what your heart wants and make sure it makes money. Do something that is commercially viable that the market wants. So now there is 2 layers to the answer. Person's like, okay, but here is another thing. I also want that it ensures a certain level of spiritual, creative, personal, psychological growth. So now you say, do what your heart wants, that makes you money, that also ensures creative growth. And what you're essentially doing is positing a question, providing an answer, then providing an antithetical question, moving the answer towards here, then providing another antithetical question, and you keep moving through a dialectic. Through the opposites, you keep coming at the center. And that is the true synthesis of how Socrates and Jesus must act as well. The Jesus way, which is the idea that you will achieve transcendence. And why must you care about transcendence? We'll touch upon that in a little second. Is the service of others. The Socratic way is the service of self. But is there a service of others without the service of self? If I am not strong enough, if I as a tree do not have roots that are deep enough, have I managed to serve others at all? If you do not have the money, can you provide for your relatives in your community? Is there selflessness without selfishness? And if you remember that very interesting episode from Friends where Phoebe and Joey get into that sort of oh wait, there is no selfless act, there is always a selfish act. You feel happy every time you are selfless, so therefore it is selfish. If somebody remembers, can you say hello about it? Can you say, I remember that episode? There is always selfishness built into selflessness. You are arriving at the essence of Advait, non-duality, in a small sense right here. I did not know, by the way, dude, this is not scripted. I did not know we'll talk about Andrew Tate and get to Advait suddenly. But now you are getting to the essence of non-duality, that things are essentially not two different things. They have to sort of move together. They sort of have to have the two sides of the same coin, kind of a, quote, cliche. It's kind of like that. Somebody's like, I came to that conclusion myself. That is why philosophy must be done on the streets, Ash. That is why there is no place for philosophy in ivory towers of universities. It must be done on the streets, but it must be done carefully, which is what people on the streets forget. Acharya Prakhar, barely, yaar. I don't care about those titles. And so, all transcendence is achieved through some amount of work that you do on yourself so that you can extend yourself to the community beyond you. That is the point. Why Andrew Tate is so prolific in a country like America or in Europe is because if you notice, and Terence McKenna predicted this a while ago. Terence McKenna predicted this a while ago when he could see the dialectic between the masculine spirit and the feminine spirit come out properly. And Terence McKenna was a psychonaut. He would talk about psychedelics very often. So he saw the world in a metaphor of spirit, and he could see that the world beyond the buildings and the cars and the money and everything else is made out of spirits, and one spirit is masculine and the other is feminine. Terence McKenna said something fantastic. He said that the feminine is going to rise up soon, and he was saying this in the 70s, and we saw that. We saw that with birth control and third wave feminism, which eventually led to woke culture. Andrew Tate is a direct consequence of woke culture. Whether the wokes want to accept it or not is a separate issue. Terence McKenna, Aditya. Look up Terence McKenna. Probably one of the most gifted men with a tongue. I think beyond Osho, beyond Guru Ramdas, beyond Jiddu Krishnamurti, Terence McKenna is one you should definitely listen to. We'll react to Terence McKenna at some point. Not Deres McKenna, Sahil. Terence. Talk about psychedelics. I want to get more cancelled. Somebody's like, I think you've cried before. Not at 11 a.m. I don't cry at 11 a.m. Usually 11 p.m. I'm not saying Tate is right. I'm not saying Tate is right. You are missing the point, Fida. Go back. We are not even at the question yet whether Tate is right and wrong. This is exactly the instinct that corrupts all thought. The desire to be correct, the desire to know. Suspend it for a second. Just understand. Navjot, why don't you define woke culture? Navjot says define woke culture. The whole premise of woke culture is to extend yourself beyond, sacrifice your need for self for everybody around you. That is the premise of woke culture. That you must control your language for the comfort of someone else. We will come to the question of right and wrong in a second. We will also come to the question of transcendence and why that is important. Because I've been asking myself the question, why is it that I exist and what is it that I do? And that has everything to do with the terminology of divinity. I miss you guys too. People have antagonized woke culture to believe that woke culture is the cause of everything good and bad, and some of my heroes, some of the guys I grew up respecting have become the exact opposite of woke culture. Jordan Peterson is an example. Joe Rogan is an example. I respect the hell out of those guys. But woke culture comes from a very legitimate instinct. How it manifests is again a separate question. Whether it's right and wrong is a separate question, but have you cared to understand it? This is not a question I ask Peterson, by the way. This is a question I ask you. Have you cared to understand woke culture yet? I also feel like I need a sofa when I sit here because I need to get comfortable as I talk. How much time did it take for me to write the book? Maybe about 4 months. We are already planning the next book, guys. Tate has a chess course. So here is the thing with Tate talking about chess. He keeps saying his father was a grandmaster. He was an international master. But anyway, coming back to it. Andrew Tate is a direct consequence of woke culture. And the interesting part about woke culture in relationship to Andrew Tate is the word culture. Andrew Tate is what is called a biological thinker. Andrew Tate is what is called a biological thinker. And the opposite of a biological thinker is a spiritual thinker. And who do you think is better? A biological thinker or a spiritual thinker? Who do you think is better, chat? I want to know. A biological thinker or a spiritual thinker? No, rationalists are the most boring guys. Sam Harris is a rationalist and listening to him is a task. I'm so happy that you guys are engaging with this problem. Nice. is the same problem, that of a dialectic. It is not the thesis, which could be biological, or the antithesis, which could be spiritual. It is a synthesis. And the synthesis is a personal problem you have to solve for yourself. But right now, in the cultural moment that we are in right now, especially in the Western world, where culture has overtaken biology, where biological denialism is the new currency of evolving culture, biology does not exist. Andrew Tate's character, that of reinforcing, re-emphasizing the biological distinction between men and women, plays a provocative role. That is why he is successful. The question of why Andrew Tate is successful is because he shocks with something we've always known, that biology is built with difference. That difference is the nature of biology on every level. Your face and my face is different, your hands and my hands are different, even though we are humans. We could have both been born in the same city, in the same part of the world, the same time, but we are still different. We could have been born to the same parents and we'd still be different. Difference is what biology is made out of. And he takes a provocative shape with it. He extends itself to a provocative point. He makes heavy business out of that difference, and sometimes in almost a disrespectful way. You have to understand the nature of provocation. If you want to understand the nature of good speakers, you have to understand the nature of provocation. There are some people that are provocateurs, and there are some people who pretend to be provocateurs. And I'm not sure where to place Andrew Tate because I don't know him enough, but from the sound of it, he looks like the latter, somebody who pretends to provoke. Because, one second. Sorry, coffee. Beer Biceps is a spiritual thinker, isn't he? I'm not going to comment. Because my normal for an actual provocative thinker, not somebody who pretends to be a provocative thinker, is somebody like an Osho. It does not look like Osho was trying. With Andrew Tate, you can see the character break often. That is the difference. I think Andrew Tate figured out how to hack social media, and Facebook did not like that. That is what I think happened. What thinker are you? I'm barely a thinker, bro. Consider me absent. Consider me absent from this debate. I'm not worthy of the debate. Guys, if you find somebody spamming in the chat, could you just please... I'm in no mood to entertain bullshit. I'm in no mood to entertain bullshit. The problem, however, is that neither biological thinkers nor spiritual thinkers truly understand the depth of the problem. Very rarely will you find somebody who truly understands the depth of the problem. And the depth of the problem begins with the fact that a lot of you are just 20-year-olds. And a lot of your parents are just 50-year-olds. I've been thinking about this so often because I've been delving a lot into spiritual thought. I've been listening to a lot of spiritual thinkers recently. And it seems like, I'm not saying this conclusively, but it seems like spirituality is not meant for 20-year-olds. I'll come to how we understand the depth. Spirituality is not meant for 20-year-olds, especially in this world. This is a world of material things. The currency of operation in this world is a material object. Everything, like somebody says, is the color of your Bugatti and the size of your house. and what lights glitter outside your windows when you look outside. How interesting. People are so online, people are so invested in shit that happens to other people. It's so interesting. That, by the way, has been one of the most interesting parts of this entire controversy. Is that nobody's get so interested. Bro, how to understand some complex words you use? Sort of what kind of complex words? As a 20-year-old something, as somebody who's young and has yet to experience the world on their own, biological thinkers appeal a lot better. If you are born in the Western world, biological thinkers appeal a lot better. It is only once you are past what the Hindus call Maya, once you understood that none of this actually means anything. That you could have had your Bugatti and had your penthouses and had as many men and women as you want in your life for friends or partners or whatever, that it still feels empty beyond that. Something that the poor world does not understand. Something that even the rich world does not understand completely. That emptiness that you feel regardless of everything. That emptiness that I can speak to now and you can feel in yourself. That you begin to look at the spiritual world. Because the emptiness in you is not filled by physical things, it is filled by poetry. It is filled by metaphor. It is filled by the divine. This is why you need transcendence. And all of us understand that a little bit. Therefore, all of us consume spiritual content, read spiritual books, listen to spiritual tapes, find God, pray, ritualize a little bit. Because that is what fills that small itch, that hole that all of us carry in a day-to-day setting. No, Ayush, I'm not saying earning money has no point. The Raj podcast says you put a review article on ayahuasca in an international journal. I'm not going to talk about psychedelics online, guys. That is one way to get into trouble for sure. Don't you think Tate is influencing youth in a wrong way? We are coming to right and wrong. You need to hold your horses. Part of the reason why I think I got interested in spiritual thought, regardless of everything, was because in whatever little comfort, privilege, money, whatever you want to call it, that I had growing up, I realized that there is no filling with this. It's still empty. Something just popped in my head when I was young enough to be like, you can extend this. You can go from a 3-star hotel to a 5-star hotel to a 7-star hotel. You can go from economy to business to first class. You can go from a BMW to a Bugatti to a whatever else cars exist, and it feels the same. The emptiness became evident to me faster in whatever little way. And therefore, I got very interested in reading all of this stuff. That is why the first moment I looked at Bachchan's Madhushala, it did not speak of alcohol to me. It did not speak of sakis to me. It spoke of something else. The last few months have been an enterprise in understanding myself. And Andrew Tate has been phenomenal in doing that. Long-haired Prakhar is coming back, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I'm growing my hair out. I haven't cut it in a while. Don't become a philosopher before you become rich. SRK. I think SRK says that in an Indian context because philosophy in an Indian context is necessarily spiritual philosophy. It's necessarily spiritual philosophy. But he also means in the sense that Western philosophy can get cynical very quickly. Even Indian philosophy can get cynical very quickly. So you might as well be rich and then philosophize. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is the exact same question. Is that once you've had everything and once it's been taken away from you, what is it that you live for? And that answer is transcendence, is divinity, is crossing the boundaries of what comes as your own limitation. That is why Jesus is important and Socrates is important and Descartes is important. That is why you listen to anybody you listen to at all. The fundamental itch that you have, that you cannot ignore, no matter how much you love and hate, no matter how much sex you have and how much money you make, you cannot ignore that at all. It does not go away. 1 second. I am interested in that. I am interested in that. But neither the spiritualists nor the biological thinkers truly understand the depth of the problem they seek to redress. For instance, the biological thinkers say genes are everything, the difference built into genes is everything, and that difference is how we operate. Forgetting that culture, which is what they seek to oppose. When I say that Andrew Tate is a consequence of woke culture, he is the dialectical opposite of woke culture. He forgets that culture is also biology, that culture is a means for evolving biology faster than genes can manage. If you remember my video on genes, memes, and teams from, 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, you will understand that point. You will understand that point. That memes are essentially genes coded in ideas. That because for a camel to tell its son that you must do XYZ, it has to die several times and the genes become coded into each other and information is passed on through generations. With memes, with your father, it is not the case. Your father can say, listen to Sri Ram. Listen to Sri Krishna. He can say, listen to Mirabai. Do you understand that? Does that make sense to you? That culture is a direct consequence of genes. That memes are a direct consequence of genes. In fact, compatibility of memes is very important. The reason organized religion, we'll put out a video about memification and gamification very soon, something I recorded recently. But the idea that organized religion survives better than actual profound religion is because organized religion is a meme. Arey, Amrit, thank you so much for 1,000 rupees. You should have spent it on alcohol. Drinking is better than supporting me, guys. If you drink an alcohol and put a story up, I will take that as support. Just be over 18 or whatever your state wants. Hey man, are you going to address the controversy? No, there is a reason we went to court, bro. So that I don't have to address this in public anymore. Because it's an endless loop. I will say something, then someone else will say something, and then the hyenas in the bottom will be waiting to say more stuff because they don't know anything about it, but, they can. The rationale is it's in a public place, therefore la 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 la. It's all gibberish. So no, we are going to say nothing about the controversy. What are your views about Devdutt Patnaik after interviewing him? He's very smart. He's very smart. People who've made up their mind after watching Rajiv Malhotra and Nityanand's video do not realize how smart Devdutt is. Stand alone, regardless of his work and history. He's brilliant. How to be ambitious yet humble? You are coming to the point of dialectic. This is something you have to figure out. If I could answer that question, why would you be important to live? Why would you have a mind of your own? This is something you have to figure out in your life. I can say things that might fit in your head, but unless you act it out, and anyway, this is a larger biological problem. I have read some David Hume. So, for biological thinkers, they don't understand that it is not the question, the buck does not stop with the genes, that it extends to the memes regardless of what you do and how you think. It does. Ideas, culture, religion, authority, everything that the biological people seem to deny is a consequence of the same thinking that they carry. The spiritualists, on the other hand, believe in tabula rasa. Who's heard of the phrase tabula rasa? On a biological level, ये ले नवजोत तेरे लिए खास. Biological thinkers don't know that. They don't know that. They deny that. If they did, then how is woke culture different from biological thinking? It is a consequence. Your Thoughts on Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, one of the best books. One of the best books in psychology. Yes, tabula rasa means blank slate. They do not believe that there is some part of personality that is built into the consequence of your genes, that you are a certain way because of your genes. They think everything is changeable, everything is malleable, everything is flexible. Therefore, their answers are so ambiguous. Their answers are so goddamn ambiguous. You sometimes wonder, what the hell are you even saying? Not just that, if you notice, you can do this with any spiritual thinker that you find. Anybody who talks about spirituality. Watch 4 of their videos where they use a word like ego. And you'll see every time they use the word ego, they use it in a different context. There is no epistemic honesty. Because there is rarely intellectual depth. With spiritual thinkers, it is very rare to find intellectual depth. The only reason why I still entertain Osho on a spiritual level is because Osho does not intend to tell the truth at all. And he says that, if you listen to him carefully enough, honestly, he says, I'm not here to tell you the truth. To give you answers is none of my business. Stop seeking those answers outside yourself. Epistemic means the philosophy of knowledge. Epistemic means the foundation of what constitutes knowledge. When you see a debate, okay, when you debate a friend and say you are debating about whether India is a great country or not, and say you disagree and they agree and so on and so forth, and you get into that debate, eventually you realize you are just disagreeing on the definition of great. At that point, when you get to the definitional level of what it means to be great, you are in the epistemic realm, in the realm of the foundation of knowledge. Spirituality to be confused with nihilism or not. Nihilism is a direct consequence of materialism, and spirituality is a direct consequence of nihilism. When you play the material game long enough, you come to a nihilistic point. You're like, this is empty. This is not fulfilling me in any way. I don't live a life that I truly enjoy. And then you're automatically tempted to get into God, religion, divinity, transcendence, however you want to phrase it, spirituality. That there is a reason why the kathas that happen, why Astha TV is more popular with your grandpa than you, because you are still trapped in material. You still want more in the world. You still want to see what exists. Your grandpa has seen what exists. He's done. So he's looking for what is beyond this world. In both cases, as a spiritual thinker and as a biological thinker, the problem is not mapped properly, and therefore a solution is not given properly. This is probably something that you'll find hard to understand. Oh my God, bro, what is this money coming in, man? You guys don't need to do this. Okay, we'll look at this money in 1 second, okay? Super chat says money. Thank you so much, Mohak, for liking the book. To get back to what we were speaking about. What were we speaking about? Totally forgot, but let's answer this money question. We were saying... Completely blanked. Okay. Do you think that do or die desire for something can be manufactured internally? Let's say that I know logically that... I now remember the question. Let's say that I know logically that I want to earn rupees 10 crores before I'm 30, but my biological constitution, visceral or primal tendencies do not agree naturally. Yes, of course. I mean, you can force yourself to be something you are not. But how long, whether that is sustainable, whether on level 3. So, question 1, what do you want? I want 10 crores. Question 2, how do you want it? Okay, this is how I want it. Question 3, will you be able to sustain it? And that is where people begin to really get deeper into the dialectical nature of problem solving. So, you might be able to. You might be able to actually force yourself to make that kind of money. A lot of people do, especially in a country like India, where necessity is the currency of operation. People operate out of necessity, not out of comfort. That is the difference between the West and India. Most of the people in India are poor. Most of the people in India want money out of necessity, not out of the glamour of money. So you can force yourself there. Your biology, your visceral primal tendencies will be shaped by the culture that you are in, by your environment. Conditioning कहते हैं इसे. You've heard of the word conditioning. But whether that is sustainable or not, you will find out for yourself. That is a question you need to know. You need to give me an answer for. Okay, going back to what we were saying. Neither the spiritualists nor the biologists, or no, biologist is probably the wrong word, the biological thinkers really know how to map the problem properly at all. And therefore the solutions are always incomplete, and that is why their clienteles are never over. That is why people buy into Tate's Hustler University, where he promises he'll teach you how to make money, and that is why people continuously attend ashrams and gurus and sadhanas and etc. etc. Because the problem is never solved. The problem is never solved. Both of them are incomplete. Both of them are incomplete. And now we can begin to answer the question you've all been waiting for. What do I think of Andrew Tate? I think Andrew Tate, 80% of what he says, rather, I'd say 65% of what he says is accurate. 15% of what he says is radical, accurate, and eye-opening. But 20%, the rest of 20% of what he says is utter bullshit. And that bullshit is so strong and heavy that it negates the other 80%. For me, as a thinker, purely on the plane of thinking, that 20% is the most important aspect about Andrew Tate. And it's very poisonous because he operates on what is called the red pill phenomena. And the red pill phenomena is very, very simple. For people who understand that fundamental itch within themselves, who understood that what the world has told them is somewhat wrong, but not quite. They don't have language. Like I said, people on the internet crave verbal ammunition. People who've understood that the world is betraying them in some way need verbal ammunition. And then these red pill gurus come about. I know that because in part, my character is similar. Not just mine, any other person in my field, any other person you can compare me to is in part somewhat related to the red pill phenomena. That is an honest approach, where you give people the language to articulate their dissatisfaction with the world. And as soon as they give them a language of how to think about the world, they're like, yeah, I am kind of convinced by that. And then you extend a solution. And that solution can be very, very, very toxic. And that is the particular case I found with a lot of what Andrew Tate says. It took 50 minutes for me to answer this question. Sorry, boss, no longer speaking in Hindi. I want to sort of also have the people who want to listen to me here in this part of the world understand what I say. Exactly, the Matrix is a great analogy, Pradyuman. The red pill is fundamentally built on the idea of the Matrix metaphor. That you live in a matrix and the world has conditioned you to accept that matrix, and here is the red pill, eat it and break out of it. I still don't think deplatforming Andrew Tate was right. I don't think that is a solution to anything. I think the reason why they deplatformed him is because they did not understand what to do with him. Genuinely think that. I don't think they understood what to do with him. Do I believe in astrology or not? No, not really, boss. No, I definitely don't believe in the theory of origin to the Bible. No. Red pill, I know the red pill is a consequence of the matrix, I know. But that is, I'm telling you that the matrix metaphor is exactly what they sell you upon. The matrix is sold to you every year on the internet. Every year they sell you in one different way or the other. And the number one kind of people who are ready to buy into it are, I think, dispossessed young men. Men who are roughly young, say between 17 and 30, who found that what they thought about the world is not really accurate and the world does not really respect or like them and they don't really find a place for themselves in the world. They're the most susceptible to this phenomena. You tell them, hey, listen, there is another way and this one will work. And they're like, yes, that's it. You know, you do it in different ways. There is a person that comes here every year, like Jordan Peterson also capitalized on this, whether knowingly or unknowingly. I am of the opinion he was more honest than Tate is. You capitalize on the same audience. It's young men. Because the culture has taken a feminine shape. Woke culture is an essentially feminine phenomena. Is money the new god in the capitalist world? It's been around for about 200 years, boss. Am I an atheist? I think that question's irrelevant. How do you walk through your first college semester in US? Need an external perspective as an 18-year-old who just moved to study at Virginia Tech. Tanish, can you DM me on Instagram and we'll talk about this because I don't think I'll be able to address this answer in its depth today. But this, by the way, is the philosophy of biological thinkers and spiritual thinkers. I've been thinking about it for about a month and a half too. Thanks to the many characters, the many problem solvers on YouTube, I could not ever come to it. Thank God I could do this justice. Given the levels of anxiety my body is feeling, I think I did a damn awesome job at communicating myself about this. Did this make sense? Opinions on his ban, I don't think they should have banned him, dude. I don't think they should have banned him. Although they could have put a stop to that practice he was doing where he was creating essentially an MLM scheme of content, right? If join Hustlers University, post my content, bring more people in, make money. That entire idea was a little bit scammy. But beyond that, what he's saying, it's okay, you know. I always believe good ideas must fight bad ideas must fight good ideas, and they should fight it out. But ideas, important word, ideas. The boundary is ideas. Krishnamurti reaction we'll do very soon. Somebody is saying, you said something very interesting that the camel has to die several times. Do you think that this process is getting efficient, hence the generation gap? Pradyuman, the difference you have to understand is the camel cannot talk to its kid. The human can. Humans operate on the currency of memes. Camels operate on the currency of genes. And genes take many generations. Memes don't. The reason why the generation gap increases every generation is because there is more silos, more isolation. How we connect to people is no longer based on where you live, but what you relate to. Because the internet has completely erased the need for geography when it comes to idea circulation. You can have more things in common with somebody who was raised in Staten Island, New York, than somebody from your own village. And your influence might be shared more with that person than this person. And therefore, generation gap increases because ideas get distributed faster. And ideas are essentially memes and so on. React on Leicester. I haven't read up on that. By the way, I heard about China. That is bloody brilliant. What, like brilliant, not in a good or a bad way, but like what the hell? I woke up and I was like, what? So I haven't read up on Iran, China, or Leicester or any of these international news. In fact, dude, I've been blissfully unaware of the world for so long. I've been spending so much more time with books and people around me. Like I remember when I found out how the Queen died. I was literally buying myself a sandwich. And then the guy I was buying a sandwich from at the delis, like he was talking to somebody about the Queen. And I was like, which Queen? He's like, the Queen. I was like, what up with the Queen? And he's like, nothing's up with the queen. And I was like, whoa, what the hell do you mean? And I found out like a day or a day and a half later, I had no idea. Or that the new iPhone was out. No idea. No idea. I've rarely been on socials. Only like the last couple of days have I sort of come back to socials at all. But generally, I've been very blissfully unaware. Going back through books, buying new stuff, setting up a house, understanding how I want to live my life in the future. Ignorance is bliss, especially when what you're ignorant of is social media. Manik Mana Triptych. I can do Manik Mana Triptych too. But you must have watched it. How many of you have seen Manik Mana Triptych? Having a guru is important or not? That's a very interesting question. The real test of whether you should have a guru or not is your guru. Because most gurus are gibberish, bro. Most gurus are gibberish. Unki khud ki life solved nahi hai. Most of the people you call whatever amount of problem solving people that exist in the world, and by this I don't mean a comment on any of the folk on YouTube, but most of the people you call gurus or so on, awakened, they're asleep themselves. Their problems are not solved themselves. What are they solving your problems for? Do I follow Gary Vee? I like Gary Vee. I love his enthusiasm. Yes, for sure. Who is a biological thinker? Peterson's a biological thinker. Elliot Hulse, I mean, I don't know if Elliot Hulse is a thinker, but Elliot Hulse operates on thinking around biology. Nietzsche is a biological thinker. If you look at his self-overcoming and all of that stuff, you can trace that lineage back all the way to, I think, you can trace that lineage back all the way to Socrates. It's an instinct. It's not really biology. Biology is a placeholder there. The instinct is the self, the idea of the body and the mind and the me. The Jesus way is extending yourself beyond me, asking the question, is there even a me? And if there is a me, what is the purpose of me? What is the vessel of me filled with? And the vessel of me is filled with others. Does that make sense? What are your views on UG Krishnamurti? UG Krishnamurti was a radical. Freud was not necessarily, well, he shared the same instinct, I would say, but he was not biological. He was not speaking of biology as much as he was speaking of the mind and the concept of me in the mind. But Freud was a diagnostic thinker. He was solving mental problems back in the day. That was his job. So he is dealing with what is the problem, what is the symptom, what is the solution. That is the level at which he's dealing. He's not dealing at the level of what is the large picture. That is not what Freud was up to. I said separate the art from the artist. Agreed. Thank you so much for saying I look sexy today. Sexy is a word I hear very often these days. Stoicism is biological. Stoicism is kind of biological. Biological thinking in the sense it shares the same instinct. I like evolutionary psychology. Could you recommend something for beginners just for entertainment? Go to Wikipedia, Pradyuman. Look up evolutionary biology and read everything you find. Go through the entire web and you'll come across enough things. What did Nietzsche mean by gazing in the abyss? I'm not sure how to condense it. But what he meant essentially is that when you stare into the endlessness of this world, in the sense of the uncertainty, the unfamiliarity, the part of the world where you don't feel at home. Have you ever experienced a moment in your life where you were in a different city, in a different place, in a different context, in a different friend group, in a different classroom, and you felt like you did not belong there? He asked you, this is a microcosmic example, this is a small example, very, very tiny, thin sliver of an example, okay? If you asked yourself in that moment, if you looked dead in the eye of the unfamiliarity, of the meaninglessness of your enterprise, of the emptiness of what you're doing, if you looked at fear, if you looked at shame and anxiety and all of these things, everything that makes you afraid, everything that is difficult, everything that is not you, everything that is the darkness of the world, if you looked at that in the eye, he said that it is going to stare back. That you don't get to just get away from it, that it is alive. what you're afraid of is a lie. When he asked you to face that, he asked you to face of the part, confront the part of you that you do not want to make peace with. Confront the part of the world that you do not want to recognize. Do, in simple David Goggins words, do the things that you hate. That is what he's asking. Don't run away. There is no running away. Best book for public speaking is going to be my next book. Do you make your hairs like Maggie, or are they naturally? They're naturally like Maggie, bro. They're naturally. Can you recommend any book that you recently read? Ram Dass, Becoming Nobody. Don DeLito's White Noise. I recently got Smoke and Mirrors by Neil Gaiman. I haven't started reading it yet. What else did I got? I got, what is that name of the book? Sophocles' Antigone by Sophocles. I haven't started reading that either. I've been so busy setting this house up, dude. Like just making sure things work. I also got a job. I'm not going to tell you about that job, but now I'm working. Guys, less Hindi going forward on this channel. Less Hindi. You have enough Hindi speakers in the Indian ecosystem. I'm going to do more English. I want to explore that part of me. Favorite philosopher is still Freud because he's so disgusting. I love it. I love it. I'm very fond of disgusting things. And Freud is absolutely probably the most disgusting philosopher in the way he does not hide away from the shit that the human mind carries inside. There is no like, oh, I will dress it beautifully. There is no need that the spiritual thinkers share. And this is the same stuff with Osho, okay? There is this talk I was listening to Osho that says, the talk's title is, Main Mrityu Sikhata Hoon. I teach death. Same stuff. Not hiding away from the disgusting dark parts of you. I love that. I am following the chest eating controversy and I'm very interested to see what Magnus says. Because he said he's going to talk about this after Julius Brar, right? So we'll see. Oedipus complex is the smallest of things. The very idea that people have to trade off. Look, we've understood that to be part of society, we have to trade off certain aspects of ourself. That the self needs to be deprecated, deleted, minimized, and reduced to exist as a cohesive group. That part we've understood for a very long time. Freud nailed it when he said it's sex and aggression. Nobody else had the balls to say it. And Freud probably had the balls to say it because he was so high on cocaine. Like, I genuinely think people underappreciate the role of cocaine in Freud's thinking. That's my thought. I'm not sure. I'm not going to make this a permanent statement, but I think a lot of why he was so bold in his approach towards his understanding of ideas, and also probably why he was so fixated on sex and aggression, is because of the cocaine he was doing. And I think in that sense, Jung truly was an evolution on Freud, because Jung said it's not really sex and aggression and that's it, but it's broader than that. There is a mythological plane on which you live. That when you live your life, you understand life on many planes. And some planes are biological, and some planes are psychological, and some planes are financial, and some planes are material, and there is all these layers. And then there is one plane upon which your life lives. That when you are walking through life, you're like, I feel like I'm Arjuna, or I am Krishna, or I'm Ram, or I am Jesus, or I'm Adam, or I'm Eve, or I'm whatever. That there is a element where you feel like you are Perseus, you're Hercules, at least in the story of your mind, for one brief second. And that is the mythological plane. And I think Jung was solid about that. That part of how we live is inspired by the narratives that we consume. Does that make sense? Your views on Fight Club, the movie, love it. Love it. Love it. Do I think Jordan Peterson's overrated? No, I think he's still underrated. How is my art of conversation better than Dale Carnegie? Dale Carnegie, as a consumer, not as a competitor. I don't think I'm a competitor in any way, even though you posit it like that. I think he's dated. I think it's been too many years. And with communication, what happens is when this is going to be another stream, we'll talk about scaling and how things at scale look very different from things not on scale. But one example of this is something like Twitter, okay? I don't know how I'm tying these things, but let's try, okay? Twitter at 20% occupancy was free speech paradise. Twitter at 80% accuracy, at 80% scale, 80% occupancy is a dangerous place for conspiracy theorists, for science deniers, for like the kind of flat earthers, for even pornography. I didn't know Twitter had pornography until very recently. At 80%, Twitter looks a lot different than 20%. At 20%, so few people know. At 80%, it's a dangerous place. This is an example. I'm not saying this is what I think. The point is that at scale, things look very different when not at scale. Right? And communication techniques are similar. Flirting techniques are similar. Negotiation techniques are similar. When you provide the world with a new set of ideas, they're novel, they're interesting, they work. When they get to 80%, like magic tricks used to be part of flirting before. People would do in the 90s, this was part of the idea of mystery, that you can build intrigue through doing some kind of a magic trick. And I mean, not probably in the Indian context, but in the Western context, it was pretty popular. Now, if you do it, you're dumb, because those ideas are dated. They've achieved some kind of scale. And I think with the Dale Carnegie ideas, some of them have achieved scale. Some of them are timeless. Some of them are timeless. I've seen my dad run those ideas because he swears by that book, and they work brilliantly. Cauliflower head, I see what you mean, but I don't think you got the gist of it well then. I think it's not word vomit. I think it's connecting the many layers that go into thinking on an everyday level. But, you know, we can have our differences. We can have our differences. Thoughts on Robert Greene. Love Robert Greene. Love Robert Greene. No, I haven't seen the Turin horse. What is the Turin horse? Prakhar, insecurity, possessiveness, jealousy is a character or a choice? It's a consequence. It's a consequence of the story you are telling yourself. It's a consequence of not seeing yourself properly. The choice is something else. The choice is what you do on top. When you're possessive and you call up your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your father or your mother or your friend or your siblings obsessively, where are you? Where are you? That is a choice. That is a choice. People will recognize that as your character. It is neither your character nor your choice. It's a consequence. What is the story you're telling yourself? What are you aimed at? What are you looking at? Why does it affect you? It affects you negatively for sure. There is no happiness. There is no peace. There is no serenity in insecurity, in jealousy. Am I a Hindu? Yes. That part of me I made excellent peace with. Definitely a Hindu and very proud about that. Very, very proud about that. That part of me I made peace with brilliantly. Mindhunter also have not seen. Can you control emotions in the way that people think about controlling anything? I don't think so. I think control, well, this is a long spiritual conversation. We don't have to get into this right now. Do you believe in the existence of the outer world? Yeah. Chitranj, can you verify I'm sitting in front of you and I can verify you are asking this question? So there is an outer world. But most of the outer world is seen through the perception of your inner filters. And that is where most of the problem exists. The inner filters. When am I going to start reaction? Soon, maybe. Soon. Satya, one of the easiest ways to expand on my Hindu identity is that I love the mythological plane of Hinduism. The stories are phenomenal, varied, beautiful, deep, and sometimes it takes me several readings to understand. Several readings and I still begin to only scratch the surface, and I'm very fond of it. I'm very fond of where I come from. Only Singh is asking, how do you talk so much crap? Is there a course for it? Yes. Have you never known about it? It's called Art of Conversation. Go buy it. The Turin Horse is a film by Bellatar. I've never heard. Are you feeling well or ill? I'm feeling great, dude. Feeling great. No problem. Thank you for asking, by the way. It's very kind. Chitranj, I know just because you're seeing something does not mean it is really there, but this is what I think the spiritualists also get wrong. If it bleeds, it exists, right? If I can make it bleed, it exists. Pain is the only thing that is undeniable. So if I can give you pain or you can give me pain, if we can feel pain on each other, like the classic idea, pinch me, am I dreaming? The idea of realizing reality through pain. So this is the solipsist idea, right? That there is no outer world, that it's all constructed in your head and you are the beginning of the world. I think it's a little bit narcissistic. 15-year-old, can you please suggest me some books currently reading can't hurt me? Try 12 Rules After. That is a good book in the same lineage. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for saying I look hot in that mustache. The reason I kept that mustache for the first 7, 8, 9 days of September was because I wanted to piss off my girlfriend. That's the singular reason. And it worked. And then I took it off afterwards. Am I facing depression these days? Nowhere near, boss. Nowhere near. But thank you for asking. If it is coming out of concern and not out of mockery, I appreciate that question. Yes, this was illustrated in the hand-burning scene of Fight Club 2, that you cannot fight the fact that this is real. And when pain arrives, you start disassociating very quickly, Yes, good point. Yeah, you guys are smart, man. I think I have one of the smartest audiences. Let's be honest. People can say whatever they want. My audience is bloody smart. Hypnotizing is real, or is it some kind of scam, in the sense that hypnotism is essentially resting your conscious defense mechanism to the point that you are open to suggestion, that you are seduced psychologically to the point where you are no longer afraid and your mind opens up to the world as a whole, and then suggestions can inform. To that extent, yes, but to the extent that it is marketed that, oh, this person's in my control, not quite. Which is like annoying your partner is the most satisfying, dude. Hell yeah. Jaspar says, Prakhar, isn't life all about neither being happy nor being sad, but to reduce suffering we face? I think part of the reason why it is phrased like that is because words like happy and sad have been distorted. In fact, the epistemology of the word happy does not consider the many different kinds of happiness that exist. There is pure pleasure, there is joy, there is ephemeral pleasure, there is permanent joy. Like there is all these different ways in which you can begin to understand what being happy even means. Being satisfied, being peaceful, being serene, right? Being present. They're all forms of happiness, and they're counterintuitively, there are all forms of sadness too. The point is that the identification of suffering is a good starting point, and then you can decide whether happiness is what you want or not. The identification of suffering, the reduction of suffering, is probably how this is my guess because I'm not sure, is how a biological thinker, somebody who's predisposed to the biological aspect of life, begins to grasp at spiritual thinking. That I'm reducing suffering. So when Peterson says, reduce your suffering, he's getting into the spiritual plane a little bit. Just a little bit, he's getting there. That's what I think. I am in New York, yes. Lijo, don't worry. Listen to it again. If the understanding is 20%, you'll begin to understand more and more. That is no problem. Is the law of attraction real? Does it work, or is it a scam? It can work because it is a scam of your own mind. You scam your own self with law of attraction. That is how it works. Imagine, that is how much control we have over our being. We have to scam ourselves to make things work. This is the truth. People who propose law of attraction should say that this is a scam you will initiate on your own mind, and then things will work. But what is really happening is you're never really accessing your being. You are learning how to manipulate your own self. How good is that? What is that worth? And by the way, you do this very often when you punish yourself. When you're like, oh, I have not had a productive day, therefore I must feel shitty, and you continue to feel shitty. What you're doing is manipulating yourself, because you cannot have faith on yourself that tomorrow you won't be what you were today. Does that make sense? Bablos! Bablos. भाई जी कसाना भाई के साथ स्ट्रीम कर लो. कसाना भाई उसके ना it has to be a regularity of episodes, no? Like we just did one episode soon. So we'll do one in a little bit, I'm sure. Bro, your thoughts on Magnus versus Hans? Bro, I am bloody baffled by how convinced Magnus is and how almost like he's been dropping some hints. But how... Achha, I must tell you, by the way, from whatever little experience I've had playing chess, cheating is incredibly easy over the board. I have seen that happen. I've been a victim of that. It is so easy over the board, you'd be surprised. Like when I found out that my team got cheated on, we were just sitting there being like, what the hell just happened? Like, how did we not figure this out? And that's a long story. But the point is, it's very easy. However, in a top tier tournament where you're going through metal detectors and all of that shit, how that happens, I don't know. I think anybody else, and you will see the chess community is very careful right now. Like nobody's like, yes, Hans cheated. Nobody's saying that. Hikaru's not saying that. Levy's not saying that. Hamilton's not saying that. Nobody's really putting their foot down and saying Neiman's cheating because they want to be careful. Because this is a tricky affair. But Magnus seems very, very convinced something is up. He seems very, very convinced. And so I guess this is probably one of the most mature controversies I've seen in the sense that people should wait and people are waiting. But I think the coverage around this controversy is so bullshit. I heard this guy say Magnus was 53-0. And I was like, bro, you think top tier chess works like that where there is 53-0 scores? He was not 53 games winning. He was 53 games unbeaten. And the anal beads hypothesis took off that, you know, all that shit is gibberish. I don't know. So we'll find out. We'll find out whether that is true or not. But I have been following it. What's worse, existential crisis or poverty? I don't know about poverty, but existential crisis feels bad. Poverty is worse. 99.999% times poverty is way worse. Yeah, man, I imagine the impact on hands is brutal. People who've just moved abroad to universities or who study abroad in universities, we'll talk. I'm going to start doing some content for you guys. We'll talk. Babloos, all of your Babloos, boss. Arjun got spanked in first game. He's playing Magnus, dude. What do you expect? London or New York? New York, definitely. Okay. Bro, how do you get out of inferiority complex after just moving abroad? All these questions. If you're moving abroad, I'm going to find a way, probably through a hashtag. If anybody in my team is watching, please make a note of this. Ansh, you're probably watching this. We'll probably start a hashtag or we'll find a way to compile questions for people who are studying abroad and I'll answer all of these questions. We'll do live streams. We'll figure this out. I understand your problem. Indians who go to study abroad are made anath so quickly. Nobody takes care of them. Don't worry. We got you. We'll do something. We'll do Manik also soon. We'll do Manik stream soon, but I want people to have watched that thing to understand truly what is up. Andrew Tate is a rough phenomena you can understand from a distance. Faridabad or London, well, my heart is in Faridabad. London's a better city by 1.5 miles, guys. I spoke to Phil earlier today. He invited me to some concert. John, I spoke to a few days ago, but it's just not been in touch enough. Things have been so busy. I know my words are hard to understand, but level up. This is an opportunity for you. Palwal over London for sure. Palwal rocks, bro. Badmausi chalaya Palwal hai. Badmausi chalaya. What will be the transition? We'll all find out together, no? Are there going to be more vlogs? Vlogs are just a little bit of a headache to produce, but the important moments, for instance, moving in, setting up this apartment, stuff like that, we might be able to vlog, yeah. ठीक है, okay, guys, this has been absolutely fun to do. I'm glad that so many of you sat through some of the most dense explanations I've done on this channel in a while. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. Is a philosophy degree worth just for each of the subject? No, I don't think so. I've never, like, at least at Columbia, I was very underimpressed by the philosophy classes. I was like, this is not my thing. I liked a lot of the religion classes I took. I thought there was a lot of real philosophy happening in those classes, even though, they took shapes and forms that I did not personally enjoy quite often. But the philosophy class, I took 2 or 3 and I was just like, bro, spare me the horror. Thank you so much, Direction Options. I'll do more live streams this week. I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams. But a lot of them will be privated. I still haven't made those decisions. But a lot of them might be privated and clipped and all of those things. We'll do question answers. We'll do unpopular demands. We'll talk about specific subjects. If you want, we can probably safely manage to do an entire stream on psychedelics, an entire stream on stuff like that. But when I talk to friends, they're like, you are arrogant. How to deal with that? You'll have to give me a little more context. You'll have to give me a little more context. Why do they feel like you're arrogant? Do you drive the conversation always to the subjects that you find enjoy like your math and algorithms and stuff like that? Also, bro, don't listen to people, man. People are so insecure. People are so insecure. Most of the times it's all projection. Don't listen to people that easily. Don't let them define the course of what you are going to be so easily. If there is any lesson to be learned from what has happened with me, and if you want to listen to me only, over the last 4 months, it's that. People want you to shut up. People want you to not be who you are. That's truly what it is. And I don't mean my opponents in this situation, my legal opponents. No, I mean everybody, people in general. More than their actions, the actions of regular people baffles me. That they need to be disinvolved. That they cannot spare my Twitter, my YouTube, my Instagram, my existence. People don't want you to be you. I mean, so many of us are also watching Magnus Neiman controversy. Nobody's going to Neiman saying, oh, or Magnus Lang saying XYZ ABC. People get so invested in other people's shit. When people say, my parents, my mom likes to gossip, my auntie likes to gossip, my dad likes to do this, you do the same stuff on the internet. Don't let people define who you are. That is the worst way to live. That is for the best way to kill your vitality, to kill your spirit. The world's huge. It's huge, So you have to ask yourself that question properly, by the way. There might be reason for you to change too. I'm not saying there is never a reason for you to listen to people. I'm just saying just because people say it is not, does not make it true. Does that make sense? Do you understand the dialectic nature of that? Do you understand the thesis and the antithesis, the two different components that you have to synthesize? Does that make sense? My narrative is my alone. I'm glad some people... There was somebody in this entire controversy, I don't remember who, I don't want to take names, that said, you never learn anything from controversies. And I think that is such a pathetic take to shit, dude. That is such a bad take on life. Like, I don't know. You learn so much. And I hope through whatever little I could manage, you learn something. Shyam Sharma is a good idea to do a podcast with. I think the last I checked, he was in India. The book is arriving, guys. The book will arrive. Lijo, I'll put the book up on Amazon. It is just that a lot of people could not stop leaving bad reviews on it. They don't realize the consequences of that. Not just for me, but for the other parties involved in this equation. My opponents also, they will suffer because of that. The public really does not take accountability for its actions. Okay. Goodbye. We'll see you very soon. Okay? Ciao.